Copper is really abundant in Minecraft, so we wanted to make it more useful, to give it more of a purpose.
And so they did. Minecraft used to have 5 tiers of tool, and then they added netherite to make 6, and now just a few years later, we're getting copper to make 7. But I'm sure you can spot the issue already here, which is that unlike diamonds and netherite, which one can just be worse than the other, you can't do the same with stone and copper because of the fact that iron is right there. And so if we look at the damage that a copper sword does, it actually doesn't fit between the two, but instead is exactly the same as stone, and there are many ways that copper tools are just objectively worse than iron, and so if that's the case, where does copper fit into the game? That's the question I want to analyze today, because one of the biggest benefits that Minecraft tried to sell us on was enchantability, and I just want to know who is actually doing this. And so that's exactly what we're going to do today, because Minecraft did just introduce a new beta and preview which does have the copper golem, copper chest, as well as copper tools and armor, and this has opened the community's eyes as to how a 7th tool set could look, but obviously there are lots of pros and cons, and so let's start with the good side. Well, I think Lady Agnes puts it best here when she says,
"It's easier to find copper than iron, so for players early in the player journey, we think it will be really helpful that we add this tier of copper tools between stone and iron."
This might not feel true if you haven't played since 2020, but now it very much is. Copper is very easy to find, not least because you can get it quite commonly from killing drowns, which spawn in rivers and sea. Oh, look at that! They spawn in rivers and seas all around, but also if you literally look around your world, you will find copper much, much easier because it's not just more abundant, it spawns on higher layers, which means that you only need to go to Y43 to find peak copper, whereas peak iron is found much lower at about Y14. This means that you're far more likely to find copper than iron, and that's before we mention the fact that iron gives you 1 ore per block, and copper can give you a whole bunch more. So copper is more abundant, and therefore just being worse than iron isn't that bad of a thing, because you are going to find it more. But what would be the point in finding copper if it's just as good as stone? Well, it is technically better in some ways than stone. Here is a durability chart I've made to show the number of mines you get with an axe, pickaxe, or shovel, and that is when using a gold tool, a wooden tool, a stone tool, etc. Each of these blocks represents 10 blocks that you can mine, and as you can see right here, there is a quick ramping up from gold to wood to stone, and then there's a ramping up again from stone to iron, and even crazier from iron to diamond, and as you can see right here, the copper tools, technically speaking, fit nicely in this gap, which means that a copper tool will last 3 times as long as a wood tool, and so is that enough for you to want it? Well, if it's abundant and you're already smelting anyway, yes. If you're not doing those things and you're not finding it and you're not smelting, probably not. But if you do want to argue that copper is worse than stone, that is just not true. It indeed is going to be always better to have copper tools than stone ones, if only for durability. And keep in mind that durability isn't the only thing, because although damage is the same between any copper tool and its stone alternative, take this for example, it's a stone pickaxe and a copper pickaxe, they will damage mobs exactly the same. That can't be said for how it works on, say, armor. Here is a leather chest plate. It gives me 1.5 what do you want to call those? Armor bars. That's a 12% damage reduction. Here is iron, which will give me 3 armor bars. That's a 24% damage reduction. And sliding not that nicely in between is the copper chest plate, which, as you can see, will give me 2 armor bars, which is the equivalent of a 16% reduction. So again, here you see that it slides slightly closer to leather, the tool below it, than the tool above it, but still, you would always want to, if you had the choice, have copper over leather. I would also make the argument that when it comes to these, even though the copper boots are exactly the same as the leather boots, here you can see me switching between them interchangeably, I would still make the argument that copper armor is better than leather, if only on the level that it's so much easier to obtain. Killing a bunch of cows might seem easy if you're already looking for their beef, but actually finding copper is much easier than leather, and so given that many people were already skipping straight to iron, having copper armor might provide a nice middle step, because that's what it is in terms of protection. That's actually pretty nice if you ask me. Also, we have the clear speed increase, which is important to note. I'm going to lay out 2 paths now, and I'm going to use them for a stone shovel and a copper shovel. Thankfully, I have a command that's going to allow me to show you how easy this is back to back, but here is 10 gravel side by side. You can compare them if you want to. I'm going to now mine this using a stone shovel. As you can see, fairly quick. I mean, if you just want to mine 10, or in this case 11 gravel, it's not going to take you that long, but you'll notice that the copper tool is notably faster. Even an efficiency 1 stone shovel level isn't going to beat this, because that was a more than 20% increase in time, or decrease, because that's what you want. A 20% increase in speed, which represents a decrease in time, like how driving 20% faster would get you somewhere quicker. Anyway, so that's the important thing to note. Copper tools are always faster than stone tools, and so that means that even though they have more durability, they'll last for longer and also get more blocks broken in the same time. What's not to love about that? Well, I guess actually that kind of brings us to the second part of this video, because these are my biggest arguments for copper. When it comes to armor, yeah, obviously leather is kind of tricky to come by, there's no stone armor, but when it comes to tools and swords and shovels, that's when the argument gets a bit harder to make, and so let's now go into the case against it. Because if those were the arguments for copper, I've got quite a few arguments against it that I'd like to raise, and I've simplified those down to these three right here. And yes, I would like to start by reminding you, this is a beta and preview. If I don't do that right now, people will say, Toycat, why are you giving them feedback on this? Clearly it's a preview, this is bound to be changing. But the point is, I'm giving them feedback so that they can change it. That's exactly what they're asking for by putting it out here. And so my first piece of negative feedback about the copper tools are the fact that they can't mine the same blocks as iron, or any of the same blocks as iron. They mine the same blocks as stone, and this critically is an issue when it comes to pickaxes, because if you want to mine the emerald ore, which is found all over the surface of mountains, you cannot do this with a copper pickaxe. Indeed, a copper pickaxe mines the exact same blocks as stone, which is to say, not very many of them, which is really disappointing for emerald and gold, and of course means that you will still need an iron pickaxe to upgrade to diamonds in the end, which means that because you need a stone pickaxe to get copper, you're going to use your copper pickaxe probably to get iron. And so do we need an intermediate tier if it's not going to be that differentiated between stone and iron anyway, and you're not going to be able to skip from copper straight to diamond? Well, I would say that, yeah, it starts to feel a little weak, and that weakness gets made even more stronger when it comes to oxidization. The key thing that every copper tool in the game does right now, whether that's a block or a bulb or the brand new chests and golems, all of these things oxidize, and although the oxidization has various benefits depending on the block we're talking about, for bulbs it changes the light level, I think one of the fun things that they should have done is made copper tools and armor oxidize. Now, sure, I could make an argument as to why they shouldn't, because what? You know, surely you're mining all the rust off them as you use them, but I would also say it'd be pretty cool if oxidization could work in one of two ways. The first way could just be that as you mine more blocks with your pickaxe, it could slowly injure the durability, and then the tool could slowly go from orange to green. This would be purely an aesthetic change, but one that I think would be appreciated, especially when it comes to armor, because as your armor takes damage, it would be fun to show just how damaged it actually is, just how long you've been wearing it, and although that would be critical combat information for your opponents, it would also just be a cool way to show which of your armor is damaged visually without having to open it up and see, oh, actually, it's fully unarmored, or fully undamaged, I guess, which I think would be a really fun little bonus. I would love to see oxidization come to the tools, because that is the one defining trait of copper, and if you don't have the one defining trait, what do you have? Well, the answer Mojang gave when they announced it was enchantability, and I get where they're coming from on this. If you don't know, wood and gold have the same attack damage and stuff like that, just like stone and copper do, except a lot of people prefer gold tools, if only because they are faster mining and more enchantable. And so Minecraft figured, oh, why don't we make copper more enchantable than iron or stone? And it technically is, but let me show you what that looks like in practice. Even if I was going to enchant my copper tools, I would find myself with unbreaking, efficiency, and unbreaking, which is the exact same that I'll find on my iron tool at level 1. Unbreaking, efficiency, unbreaking. If I then get a full enchantment table set up, which for some reason I have, you'll see that my free options look like unbreaking, efficiency, and unbreaking free, whereas on an iron pickaxe it is unbreaking, efficiency, and unbreaking free. And then the ... dots are obviously going to be the thing that changes this, but ultimately that means that even one of the biggest benefits, one of the biggest unique points about how this is better than stone or iron isn't one that people are going to be using, because even if they think to go ahead and do it, which by the way, you're going to need an iron pickaxe to get yourself the diamonds and to get yourself the obsidian that you'll need for this, so ultimately you probably wouldn't be enchanting your copper tools anyway, anyway, but even if you really wanted to do it, it's not immediately clear to the end user how much more enchantable this actually is. To nerds like me, yeah, I know that if I have both of these tools at full durability, and what I really need is Silk Touch, I know that enchanting my copper pickaxe will get me there more likely, but for most players, it seems like they'll do exactly the same thing, and indeed, in my first setup test right here, it has done exactly the same, and so there are 3 big arguments against copper that make it much more like a slightly better stone than like a worse iron, which is a problem because I think that ideally it would fit nicely between the two, or even fit much closer towards iron than copper. Well, why would I think that? Here are my opinions on how you could change iron, or how you could change copper, to actually make it fit better into the game. Because I'm going to start with quite a controversial one here. Copper should be made as good as iron is now, and it's actually iron that should receive the buff. The clearest way to point this out would be to look at the durability chart again. You can see that iron has about double the durability of stone, which has double the durability of wood, but then diamond has about 6 times that of iron. Now, diamond tools are great because they mine blocks faster, and they're great because they can mine more blocks, but the biggest benefit is this extra durability, and I think that you could easily bring iron a little bit closer to it, say up to 300 or 350, and then that would allow you to make copper almost as good as iron in many a way. And given that copper is found about as commonly as iron used to be before caves and cliffs, it used to be you'd find iron down basically every cave hole you spawn next to, but now iron is found much deeper in your ground, and so if it's harder to find, I think it should be more rewarding, and given that copper could nicely fit into that old iron niche, it could be almost as good as iron is right now in basically every way, and then you could give iron the fun little buff. You could then choose to, if you want, make copper more fun in the enchantability, although I did just enchant both of them and I got a worse enchantment on the copper one somehow, but this means that enchantability is not going to really resonate with most people as a reason to use copper, I don't think, and so what if we gave them a great one, and I think oxidization could be that. Now, there's 2 ways you could go about oxidization. It could be purely a visual thing, I think people would like that by itself, or if you wanted to, you could go a little bit more complicated mechanic by having oxidization slowly degrade the copper tool. This would see it be just as good as an iron tool when you first make it, but once you get past, say, the 50% durability point, or 20%, or whatever you want to make it, then that could have a massive downgrade on performance, which would make you want to put unbreaking on there in the first place, at which point you would benefit from the enchantability, and I think that this could be a really unique selling point, and then just on top of that, all you've got to do is make it able to mine some emerald blocks, make it able to mine gold blocks, and boom, you've got a pickaxe that's good for the early game, but has some fun, unique benefits for the mid and maybe even the late game too. That is my idea, at least. I think that copper could be made substantially better and still not threaten iron, but I love what they've done in terms of making an early game feature that resonates with all of the community, but I hope that they do consider tweaking it based on the feedback that we've seen, not just from me, but from everyone down below. If you have a fun idea for it, please do share it. I know that this is the sort of channel that is much more approachable for people from Mojang, because instead of just yelling our opinions into the void loudly and trying our best to have the loudest opinion, I actually try to have a more rational deep dive in a calm and hopefully useful way for all of you watching, and indeed from anyone from Mojang watching. Here are my ideas. I hope you enjoy them. They're free. You can take any of them, because ultimately I would like to see Minecraft get better, and it seems like Drop Free 2025 really is doing that. I'm amazed at how much they've brought to the early game of Minecraft and how much it's resonated with the community, and it gets me excited for the rest of what we're going to see. But for now, thank you for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you for watching. Like the video if you liked it, share it if you really liked it, and if you really liked it, subscribe, because I'll see you next time. Bye.